Everyone, I'm Ashley Quicken. I've never done this before, so hopefully this works out well. But I'm going to talk to you today about somewhere that's close to my home. I live in Fairfax County, so I'm going to talk to you about Mount Vernon. As you probably know, our first president lived there, George Washington. What you probably didn't know is that he actually didn't build the house, he only actually renovated and made it what we see today. His father actually built the house in 1735, and he started renovating it right before, maybe 10 years before the Revolutionary War started breaking out, so around 1750. When you actually look at the house, most colonial houses are symmetrical on each side, so let's say a house has two windows on this side, it's going to have two windows on the other side, or perfect spacing. Mount Vernon actually doesn't have that. So there's a huge space on this side, but it's a little tiny space on the other side. So never noticed it until I took art history class. So maybe if you look at a picture, I would show you one, but I don't know how to work that yet. So maybe next time. Most houses of the time were perfectly symmetrical, but his house is not, and he wanted it that way. So perfectly well-preserved historical site in Northern Virginia. We all took this trip in Northern Virginia as students in elementary school. One of the largest and probably the longest field trips we ever took, aside from maybe Jamestown. There are 3 must-dos when you go to Mount Vernon. The first one obviously being the mansion, which George Washington always called the farmhouse. This is basically dedicated on the inside to George Washington's life. You'll see portraits of George Washington. You'll see things from his presidency, like his chair that he sat at the, like in the Oval Office kind of deal. I think there's even a couple of his wigs in there as well still. A couple of his dentures, which totally disgusting because they're like pig's teeth and, disgusting stuff. But anyway, you also have to go see the tombs, which are there's an interesting story behind that. Both he and his wife, Martha, are buried there. And then lastly, the thing you should also see as well is the museum. I could spend the entire day at the museum. It's very well curated. It deals mostly with his campaigns in the military. But there are some other things like he did have slaves on the property, so it deals a little bit about the slaves that he held there, as well as some, the last moments of his life. He did die on December 14th, 1979, of a suspected cold or flu. He had very severe complications. So they go a little bit through the last couple of hours of his life. He had very different treatments with medicine, and he had blood taken out of him and it was treated with vinegar and then put back into him, and lots of different various stories out there. So it's a very somber experience when you are there, but it's very well worth it. So you do get to experience all of that. Very educational, maybe a little bit harder for the younger children because they don't necessarily get it. But while you are in the museum and you do something like that with the younger children can go to the interactive part of the museum, where they get to dress up in colonial wear and do more hands-on activity, while the older kids get to go to the actual museum part, which is one of the greatest things I think about a lot of the museums in Virginia, because there's so much history here, is that they spend a lot of time focusing on what they can do to preserve the history while making it accommodating to everybody so that everyone can enjoy it, and really understand and understand what was going on, and preserving, I say, the fabric of what our nation was, through such personal artifacts, through our president, or, something of that, our, beginning of our country. It's such a influential thing that this one person created such a big beginning. for the United States. So I hope if you don't live in Virginia, that one day you get to come to Mount Vernon. It's definitely worth the trip. There's so much to do there. And if you haven't and you live in Virginia, I hope you get to go there. And if you've already been there, then you obviously know a little bit why it's so awesome. So I hope you guys have a great day and best of luck.